What is this clusterfuck? Once again, the comic astounds me with its ability to start strong and then limp over the finish line. Or rather, in this particular instance, pitch itself headfirst over the finish line into a big brick wall that's sitting right past it. Boy, does this cover make some promises that aren't kept. We see Crocbot in a giant tank with fire in the background while he holds Tails above his head in triumph, and Athair is there, walking up the side of the tank rather calmly, and showing off his sweet legs, pretty well defined for an old man. We open the comic on an advertisement for the Sega Genesis game Garfield Caught in the Act. I generally ignore these advertisements when reviewing comics, but I just had to mention this one because it looks so bad. Oh my god, it was on the Game Gear too! That looks even worse! Anyway, pardon my stalling. We actually open on yet another poorly drawn recap page, this one even sloppier than the first two. I've already made it very clear that I think this was a terrible way to lead off each issue, and that it doesn't work as a framing device, but they managed to take it one step further by appropriating a classic Simpsons joke.
But it comes with a free Frogut.
That's good.
The Frogut is also cursed.
That's bad.
The actual issue starts up back with Tails and Athair in the cave complex where the old Echidna informs him that he has been chosen. Oh boy, the start of the Tails Chosen One storyline. Tails is sort of eager to get back to his own mission, but Athair takes the opportunity to monologue to him about the history of the Echidnas and the origins of the floating island. We only get a very brief summary of the events that will be expanded upon in later issues, but this is also technically the start of the Echidna history arc as well. Also, what does this have to do with the current plot arc that is going on, I have to ask? Credit where it's due, Mark Gallagher was the one who wrote this whole arc, so he could not have known what a tangled knot it would become when Ken Penders eventually got his hands on it. Athair explains that Knuckles is his great-grandson, and that they were both part of the line of Guardians from the floating island. At this point, Tails decides to just check out and tries to find the exit despite Athair's insistence that he talk to the ancient walkers, whose statues suddenly come to life and grab him. Yeah, Tails, I'd have that face too if a giant lizard was grabbing my arm and pointing at me with a stake that would make Dracula nervous. Meanwhile, we cut back to Crocbot, who has to keep his blimp circling around the dock, as the freedom fighters being in the area makes it too risky for him to bring it in for a landing. So that of course raises the question about why you decided to uncloak the thing when you knew that they were in the area. He leaves Wombat Stew unconscious on the table, and if you think that's actually a Chekhov's gun for later in the story, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the guy has absolutely no more significance to the plot. Not that he ever did mind. Crocbot starts up his, oh my god, CD-ROM RAM. Damn it, stop smiling, it's a stupid joke. Which easily dashes out and bowls over the Down Under freedom fighters. You know, I'd be a lot more invested in their plight if I actually knew anything about them. But luckily, we don't have to care because we immediately cut to a flashback of the distant past, where dinosaurs roam the earth. Oh my god, is this going to turn into the opening of the Super Mario Bros. Movie? Short version, suddenly a Chaos Emerald fell from the sky, and they have great powers to cause both miracles and destruction, and apparently pagan worship. The comic's words, not mine. And apparently Tails is the chosen one, who will bring all of these scattered emeralds together and lead the world to something called the Great Harmony. Tails was apparently giving this speech after, who knows, maybe they force-fed him some hash or made him drink some Kool-Aid, but he was clearly having a bit of a peyote moment there. He comes to, not really understanding anything of what just happened, and Athair decides to take this moment to play coy with him after insisting that he learn all about this babble, and then he doesn't even try to explain it when Tails says he can't remember much of what happened. Tails' body is now fully healed, and he is greeted by Barbie Koala falling right into his arms. She was apparently knocked into the creator by the ROM RAM, and pleads with Tails for help. Yep, get help from the child that you initially found injured and surrounded by mookbots, and who hasn't even managed to say 2 coherent words to you. Well, beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. Back at the battle with the others, the fight isn't going well, at least not until Walt decides to reach into his pocket and pull out a Bomberang. I was wondering when this stereotype would show up. And as we see, a single bomb is enough to decimate the robot that was before, trampling them into the dirt. So why did you wait until now to use the damn thing? Cut away to Crockbot, who decides he can't stall any longer and prompts the blimp to come in for a landing on a giant fish hook? I'm pretty sure that's not how actual blimps dock, but okay. He's warned about how delicate a procedure it is, and any sort of sudden and wild force could cause the blimp to crash or explode. And then Barbie and Tails burst in through the window right at his back, slamming him into the controls, and of course... Crockbot is, of course, none too happy about this, and knocks out Tails before jumping into his Mega Mecha tank. Methinks they weren't even trying at this point, and drives straight through a wall, escaping into the distance. Tails flies Guru Emu up into the air, where he lobs a bomb that takes out the brakes, causing Crockbot to careen right into the crater where Athair was staying, and then... And look at that, the explosion is in the shape of Athair's head. Symbolism? Down at the beach, the Down Under freedom fighters offer Tails a chance to join them and stay with them here in Down Under, mates. But Tails suddenly gets a bout of homesickness and starts tearfully wishing he could go home. So, character arc completed? No, not really. And then, as convenience would have it, Ray and Bottlenose from the FFF show up and present Tails with a newly repaired submarine. Apparently Ray knew a guy who had a cousin that ran an undersea garage. He says his pal Brain Coral fixed it up, but come on, there had to be more to it than that. And Tails shares a tearful goodbye with all his new Down Under friends that he had spent literally no time with and had absolutely no emotional connection with at all. Tails does give a rather rousing speech about how Sally and Sonic will be glad to hear about all the Freedom Fighter teams all over Mobius, because as long as they're united, they can never be defeated. I actually really like that sentiment, and it's a good note to end on. It's just a pity that the rest of the issue was a pretty big letdown. This mini started off pretty strong, even if Tails' behavior was a bit out of the blue for it. It had a strong setup for the rest of the story and hinted at Tails becoming more independent and maybe learning a lesson about family or not acting like a child if he truly wanted to be seen as mature or some such nonsense. No such luck here, as the second issue sort of rushed through introducing us to the Down Under freedom fighters Crockbot and Athair, though it did a pretty good job moving the story ahead slightly. And then it all goes off the rails in the third issue, where the beginning is dedicated to shoving a bunch of history at us that has nothing to do with the current story, and introduces the idea of Tails being the Chosen One, a plot point that would meander and waffle about for years without anything resembling a suitable payoff or resolution. A majority of the action happens off-screen and involves a bunch of characters that we as readers do not care about and know nothing about, nor do any of them make an especially strong first impression, which makes their tearful goodbye and immediate acceptance of Tails just feel incredibly hollow. I've heard a lot of people rumbling over the past few years about how decompressed storytelling is hurting comic books, how the need to stretch out storylines ad infinitum is bad for the medium. But this miniseries is a perfect example of the positives that come from the acceptance of stretching out the story. This mini introduces 10 new freedom fighters and makes no effort to endear us to any of them, using them as either a deus ex machina to get Tails out of trouble, or convenient exposition dumps to keep us up to date on what the hell is going on, since we're not really shown a whole lot of what is going on. The story tries to have us believe that Tails is going through some sort of arc through the issue, but it seems confused on what sort of arc it wants him to go through, and then it doesn't really deliver. It sets up the arc in the first issue, completely forgets about it in the second, and then brings it back at the very end of the third issue out of the blue with no explanation as to how Tails went from wanting to be more independent to suddenly pining for his friends and family back in Knothole. Bit of a leap considering that he at no point before the end of the third issue showed any sort of homesickness or remorse for his hasty actions, nor did he really suffer any great consequences for it either. I will compliment the artwork yet again, as it's more in line with the first issue in the amount of over-the-top reactions and expressions that the characters make, though there are more examples of hilarious off-model work here and there. So goodbye, Tails Mini, and good to see that you're keeping the streak of underwhelming side stories in this comic series going. Next time to go back to the main series yet again as we tackle issue 30. I'll see you all next time, everyone.